Okay, so welcome everybody, and this is a wonderful occasion, the beginning of Upavana's first in-person meditation retreat, and also being able to broadcast live. So I invite you to relax. This meditation retreat is around the subject of samadhi. And samadhi is very important. It's an essential part of the Buddhist path, but it's also there's a lot of conflicting ideas around samadhi. So I thought it would be very useful starting out a retreat to get on a common set of ideas around what it is we're talking about and what it is we'll be cultivating over this retreat. First, a little bit on the structure of the retreat itself. We're going to have this session at the end of the talk. We'll wrap things up, and then tomorrow morning at 6, there'll be an optional morning puja, and then at 9, there'll be the next in a sequence of instructional talks, which will describe the progression, the development of samadhi. And interspersed in between the talks, there'll be periods of practice. So online, there's a schedule posted, and that's what we'll be doing here at the place we're doing the retreat. But if you're doing this in your own home or your own space or with friends, then you can take that schedule as a guideline. It's designed to support the practice, support development of samadhi, in the same way that we have taken the 8 precepts to support our meditation. The schedule is designed to make the 8 precepts a little easier, a little bit more feasible. By giving you options, reorienting the day a little bit. So you can eat more in the morning and then just have tea or a snack in the evening, so that you can practice through the course of the day without exhausting yourself, so that you don't indulge in sleep and miss the next day of practice. So I highly recommend taking a look at that schedule and seeing how best to integrate it. And then if you'd like to tap into the talks or the practice sessions, we've been operating on the idea of putting this onto YouTube, and we're hoping that that's working right now. But I think the reality is we'll probably also have this Zoom room open, which many people are familiar with. So if you like practicing with others and being able to see who's joining you, then this will also be a place that you can come at those times. And so that's the specifics of the retreat and how it'll be run. And so it's 2 days, it's a weekend. And the weekend is for the development of samadhi, and for understanding what this actually is. So the word samadhi is often translated as concentration. But while samadhi includes concentration, it includes the ability to focus, it is not exclusively that. It means something much more. In terms of references, there are not a lot of books dealing specifically with samadhi, nor are there a lot of Dhamma talks dealing specifically with samadhi. And why is this? Well, because Dhamma talks tend to try to describe the whole of the Buddhist path. And samadhi, Samma Samadhi, is just one of the parts of the Eightfold Path. Notably, it's the 8th one. It's there at the end. And so we can be pretty clear with ourselves that if the first 7 factors of the Eightfold Path are out of balance, it will be difficult to attain samadhi. And so most Dhamma talks try to encompass this, try to encompass the whole path and bring about the culmination of samadhi. But the reality is, often when we are sitting down to meditate, we're trying to develop concentration. We're trying to develop our mental power so that our contemplation of Dhamma is more effective. And it could also be said that while samadhi happens in meditation, not all meditation is samadhi. Because often when we sit to meditate, what we're doing is we're giving ourselves an arena, a place, a time, some seclusion in order to develop our mind, develop our heart, understand why we react the way we do to the world. That's not all just about becoming peaceful. Some of that is actually paying attention to things and contemplating things that stir us up. And we need to figure out why that is. So when we're meditating, we're not always developing samadhi. But when we are trying to develop samadhi, and this is something that's very interesting, it will follow a natural progression. So many people have complained that when they go to the Pali Canon or to the Buddha's teachings, they don't see step-by-step instructions on how to meditate. Why didn't he give us any techniques? Why didn't he say count your breaths? Or why didn't he say do this or do that? And this is because when the Buddha did teach about samadhi, he didn't extract it from the Eightfold Path. He didn't say, just do this, just one thing and everything will work out. He tried to fold everything in together. But there is one very important sutta where you could say that the Buddha is giving the technique of meditation. He is giving the method for developing samadhi. And it's interesting because it's called mindfulness of breathing, or Anapanasati. And so the word mindfulness is there. And mindfulness is the path factor, is the seventh one. It's the one that leads into samadhi. So the Buddha is pointing out that in order to develop samadhi, you'll want to be developing mindfulness. And two very good reference books that deal with samadhi. One is by Bhante Gunaratana, and it's called Beyond Mindfulness. Another is by Ajahn Brahmwangso, and it's called Mindfulness, Bliss, and Beyond. These are two books specifically about samadhi. And I think it's also very interesting that they both include the words mindfulness and the words beyond in their title. They're both like, okay, mindfulness has to be there. It has to be developed. It has to be cultivated and made strong. But then there is something beyond that. And that beyond is samadhi. So samadhi is the power of our mind to sustain mindfulness through a variety of circumstances. If we want that, then we've got to cultivate it. Now, to be clear, we don't need to meditate to have some measure of samadhi. And if we look in the suttas, in the Pali Canon, we will find that the vast majority of people who attained a stage of enlightenment did so with just enough samadhi to do exactly what you're doing right now. Respectfully and attentively listen to the Dhamma. That is a form of samadhi. It's a form of focusing and sustaining the focus of your mind on something. If you can do that even for one powerful moment, you can make a breakthrough to the Dhamma. And so we're not just talking about deep stages of meditation. We're talking about a path factor. We're talking about a capacity of the mind. So when you point that out, this is like an energy or a strength of our mindfulness that develops. And that can happen under all sorts of circumstances. So you can have samadhi unintentionally. And this it can be quite surprising for people that maybe they'll go to out into the forest. They'll be out camping and they'll come and sit down next to a lake and they'll be looking out at the lake, and suddenly they'll feel very relaxed, and suddenly their mind will become very bright, and maybe they'll understand something that they never understood before. I was talking to somebody recently who had this exact experience, and he met me a few days later, and it started to make sense. But until he met me, he thought he had been going crazy because nobody would believe what he was trying to describe. But you can have samadhi whenever the conditions line up. But now, as Buddhist practitioners, as spiritual practitioners, we have the opportunity to develop those conditions. And that is what the exercise of meditation, of developing samadhi, is all about. It's an acknowledgement that we can grow in samadhi. We don't have to just let it be random. We don't just have to let all the other 7 factors of the path develop over time. And when they kind of overflow, then we get these moments of bliss and understanding and mindfulness and concentration. We don't have to wait till that happens. We can take the little bits of the path factors that we've developed, and we can practice making our mindfulness continuous. And so this is what we're going to be focusing on. Now, when I was first exposed to the idea of meditation, I was visiting a zendo. This was many, many years ago, before I even became a Buddhist. I didn't really know it was possible to even be a monk, but I visited a zendo in a town where I was staying, and they were describing meditation, and they said, okay, sit and pay attention to your breath and try to stay with it. And they say, if you're able to stay with it for a certain amount of time, then you'll be able to kind of expand your mindfulness out through your entire body. You'll be able to feel the breath in your entire body. And that instruction that I got in the Zendo is the same instruction that you read in the Anapanasati Sutta. It's the same instruction if you read a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, you'll get the same instruction. It's the same instruction you'll get in a Thai temple in Bangkok. It's the same instruction you'll get anywhere in the Buddhist world. Because when we're talking about meditation, there are all sorts of different goals for meditation. Maybe you want bright mind states, or maybe you want to understand the 4 elements, or maybe you want to see impermanence. But if you're developing samadhi, you're doing something very specific, and it's going to have to follow a natural progression. It's basically, you're starting with some simple mindfulness, and you're making it stronger. You're making it more continuous. You're making it able to resist obstructions and obstacles along the way. So what we're going to be looking at over the next 2 days are the first 4 steps in the Anapanasati Sutta. And these deal specifically with the experience of the breath in the body. But because you can't take the body away from the mind, they're also going to teach us how to develop this capacity of our mind through paying attention to the body and through paying attention to the breath. But tonight, I'm going to actually talk about what I've been calling step 0, because there is this reality that every time we sit down to meditate, we're not necessarily ready for samadhi. Our mind doesn't immediately become concentrated. We don't know. I don't know. There are people who have that experience, but I don't know many people who sit down and become happy. Most people sit down and they get very antsy. Their mind starts to be like, no, I don't like this. I don't like sitting still. I don't want to be calm. I want to have fun. Let's go do something fun. Let's get off the cushion. So even in the Anapanasati Sutta, which is kind of about the technique of developing samadhi, you will find that there is something that comes before the technique even begins. And the Buddha says it like this. He says the meditator goes to the forest or goes to the root of a tree or goes to an empty hut. They sit down, they set their body upright, they sit with their legs crossed, and they bring their mindfulness to the fore. They bring it parimukha, they bring it basically in front of them. They start paying attention to what's right in front of them. Ever mindful they breathe in, ever mindful they breathe out. So this is what we would call step 0. Very interestingly, when the Pali Canon made it to China, they rewrote the numbers because there's no really numbers in the sutta, and they said this is number 1. And then they took the next 2 and they said those are number 2. They put them together because this is so important. You can't skip it. And so tonight, I'm going to be talking about this step 0 to kind of point to the fact that we can't just immediately sit down and begin to do a technique. It's not going to work. And I say this, but the thing is, you have all already experienced this. You have already tried. I guarantee if you're listening to this talk, you're not brand new to Buddhism. You've tried to sit, you've tried to follow your breath and count them and not get distracted, and you were gone. And that's why you're listening to this talk. That's why you're interested in attending the retreat, because it didn't work automatically. You knew this was going to take practice, and you wanted some pointers and some help and some support from others. So when we sit down to meditate, there are these things these conditions that have to be set up in the mind for samadhi to begin to start, for us to be able to apply a technique successfully. And many people have a love-hate relationship with meditation, specifically because they try to skip ahead. And they have varying degrees of success. So many people who have studied or tried to learn meditation are aware of the 5 hindrances. The Buddha described these, and they are sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. And I said those rather quickly, but you can find thousands of talks and books on these subjects describing these and how these come up. The important thing to know is that many people's experience is they try to meditate on something, and these will come up, and they'll kind of stumble in their meditation, and they'll try to figure out why this came up. And then when they think they've got it, they'll go back to the technique. But then maybe they'll come up again and they'll have to figure it out, and then they'll go back to the technique. And part of the reason this is happening is because they didn't establish the mind and the mindfulness before beginning the technique. So the hindrances are going to be able to come up, and they're going to be able to hijack the mind. The hindrances are basically that we call them 5 different things, but it's our mind that does them. There are 5 different ways that our mind reacts to us trying to direct it and give it a task intentionally rather than out of habit. So our first step in mindfulness is like the preliminary steps that the Buddha is describing. And it says step 0 is really about finding within ourselves the desire to meditate. That is the first thing we have to do. And why do I say it that way is because why do we sit down to meditate? If we really check in, we may find that one of the hindrances is actually already present. Many times we sit down to meditate to get away from something, or to fix something, or to try to distract ourselves from something. Maybe we intuit that meditation is going to help us with some problem we have or some bad habit. It's going to help us cut through an addiction. or it's going to make us happy. And if we're thinking that, then we're probably reacting to the fact that we're not happy in that moment. And so when we sit down because of these reasons, we're carrying the hindrances with us into our attempt to develop samadhi, where they're the reason we're sitting down to meditate. So in order to be successful in our meditation, before we even begin with step one, we've got to deal with these. We've got to deal with these hindrances. It's really best, if it's possible, to finish them off. And one of the first books on samadhi that I read was Ajahn Brahmwanso's Mindfulness, Bliss, and Beyond. And he describes this quite vividly by talking about being in the present moment. And I think this is a good kind of way of understanding it, but it's been popularized. Another book that everybody knows, This Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, is like, now, be in the now. It's like once you're in the now, you won't have any problems. It's true, but it's hard. It's easy to say, oh, dude, just stop living in the past, be in the now. But how do you do it? How you're doing it is multifaceted. And for me, it's really about assessing, do we want to meditate? Do we want to be here? Or are we resisting the experience of being here? And if we're resisting in any way, if we're distracted in any way, then our experience of the breath will be distracted. It won't be natural. There will be an aspect of trying to control or manipulate it. So we really just start to assess, when we've decided to meditate, what is it that's going on in our mind? Why is it we want to meditate? And don't launch into a technique, but listen to the mind. Listen to what it's saying. I had this experience recently. There's a path right back here that the retreatants will be able to do walking meditation on. And it's in a pine forest, beautiful, it's clear, it's next to a bubbling stream. There aren't really any bugs. It's cool, it's shaded, it's perfect, it's gorgeous. Like you would pay hundreds of dollars to get an Airbnb that had that kind of setup next to it. And I was out there one day and I was walking back and forth, and I heard my mind talking about a conversation I had had recently, a sort of argument with somebody. And I said, no. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm in one of the most beautiful places on earth, and my mind wants to think about that. That happened hours ago. Now, this is an example of exactly what we're dealing with. Is our mind talking about the thing that we're doing right now? Or is it talking about the past or future? Is it talking about something else? So the first thing we got to do is sit down and listen. Actually listen to what the mind is saying. And I say sit down, but even on the walking path, even if we're trying to be mindful while doing an activity, still we should pay attention. Is my mind describing the activity? Is it experiencing the thing that I am doing right now? Or is it trying to think about something else? And that is our hint as to whether or not the hindrances are directing our mind. Say we're thinking about a TV show, or a chat room, or a Facebook picture. That could well be sense desire. And Luciana's smiling because we all have this. It all happens. But the important thing is when we sit down to meditate and that happens, we can know that this will prevent us from being successful in developing samadhi if we don't challenge it. We can't blot this out by trying to count our breath really rigidly. Okay, yeah, I really want to see whatever, The Walking Dead or whatever, but first I'm going to meditate. Okay, so in, out, in, out. No, it doesn't work that way. It really won't. Basically, we have to challenge it. And we have to say, like, where am I? What am I doing? What is going on? We have to listen. We have to feel. And there's no way of getting around this. We have to, on some level, become interested in what's going on right now. And for some of us, it's really hard. We just really don't care. Like, we're meditating because we want to go somewhere else, but we're not going to get somewhere else. That's not what samadhi is about. Samadhi is about mindfulness, and mindfulness is the awareness of what's going on right now, made strong and continuous. So you kind of can't pick what's going on right now. You can't pick what you're going to be experiencing. You have to open up to what you're experiencing. The Buddha uses the preliminary steps of sitting down and sitting upright and, folding your legs. But he's really describing getting in a comfortable posture, setting up the preconditions to being okay with what's happening right now. He's not saying sit down rigidly and fold your body in a yogic pretzel and, then the energy is going to be shooting up your spine. He's not saying that. He's saying go somewhere peaceful, go somewhere away from distractions, sit comfortably, and then start to bring your mindfulness into the moment. What's going on right now? Listen. Actually listen. Not just to what's going on, but listen to what your mind is saying. What is it focusing on? This step is very important. And so you're gonna have time to kind of let it percolate before we actually address step one tomorrow. Step one is where we actually start to do the technique. But whereas many people have this sort of love-hate relationship with samadhi, and some people are even like, forget samadhi, just be mindful, it'll be fine. They're not wrong. You can have momentary samadhi, momentary moments of clarity, and you can accomplish a lot. But that attitude is often motivated by the fact that they've tried to do a technique without establishing awareness in the present moment, without fully realizing an interest in their life and basically what's going on around them. So when we're starting to ask this question, like, what is my mind paying attention to? What is it describing? What does it want to be doing right now? And we start pulling that apart. There's not going to be like an aha moment where we're like, okay, yes, I'm here right now. It's going to be very subtle, and it's not something we can watch for. Right? Am I here yet? Am I here now? Now? And I know because I've spent years of my life doing that. It's like, am I enlightened yet? Is it coming? Any minute now. And that's just the way the mind is. My mind was like that before I sat down to meditate. Meditation didn't create that. It just revealed it to me. And it's taken me quite a while to begin to understand this process. But when we're developing step zero, we're getting ready to be able to apply a technique, we're going to find that the settling of the mind is very subtle. And it's going to be twofold. And one, we're going to, those nagging voices that are trying to get us to pay attention to something else, they're going to start to disappear. And that's good. We're not looking to add something necessarily. We want the hindrances to go quiet. Okay. So when the voices stop asking us when's dinner, or they stop, being like that dripping faucet. Why do you could be like, a bubbling brook is beautiful. A dripping faucet is not. It's just water. Like, why am I upset? And get interested in what's actually happening right now and start thinking about it like a bubbling brook. And the dripping faucet becomes like a bubbling brook. And there's like, oh, wait, I actually, that's kind of cool. How does your body feel? You can be like, oh, I've got to sit in this upright posture. You don't. Sit on a chair. Be comfortable, just not so comfortable that you'll fall asleep. Often when I find my mind is starting to really relax into the readiness for samadhi, I just kind of want to reach out and like touch a leaf. Have you ever done that? You're just like, oh, that's what they feel like. There's so many of them, but we see them, but we don't feel them. Or I'll just kind of stop and a breeze will go by. And this sounds stupid. It sounds like daydreaming, but it's something that does not happen when the hindrances are present. We are trying to look for something else, something exciting. But the experiences I'm describing are just right there. So the hindrances go quiet and interest starts to develop. Now we will, if we let ourselves do this, then we will actually intuit when the mind is ready for the technique. There's going to be this sense of contentment, or this sense of it doesn't matter whether you meditate or not. And that's probably the easiest way to describe it. Is most of our sense of time is dictated by the hindrances. Either, we want to go to sleep, this is boring, or we want to do something else, we're restless, that'll be more interesting, or I just can't wait till this ends. But when the idea of time falls away, we're just kind of like, oh, I don't really actually care if I stay or if I go. Then we're ready. We're ready to start applying the technique because there's nothing standing in the way. What's going to happen is there's going to be a sense of the mind being the very basic level ready to be directed towards something or to be aware of something specific. And there's no way to describe that and have everybody go and do it. You will find this. So what I describe, for the next, basically the next 12 hours is just let yourself not seek an experience. Actually, just wait until you actually care about the little pattern of the rug, or until you're just feeling this odd sort of like happiness, and we're allowed to be happy, and then start to notice if it's possible maybe to be aware of a certain part of your body, and not necessarily pinpointing, the breath yet, but see if it's possible to get a general sense of continuous mindfulness of some part of your body. You're aware that it's there for a length of time. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And this is when we're ready to actually begin mindfulness of breathing, is the mind is capable of settling because the hindrances have gone quiet. And that's what the Buddha means by bringing mindfulness to the fore, is not just being in the present moment, but that we actually can direct our mindfulness now. We can choose what we're being mindful of. Whereas before, we're just going to be mindful of things as they come up. But when samadhi is beginning, at this first step, we're realizing that we can actually choose. We're not just going to experience what happens, but we can start to develop a continuity of mindfulness of a certain thing. and that it will get stronger. So these are all some ideas to be practicing with, basically asking ourselves, do I want to meditate? And if it's a no, if it's a resounding no, then to start to ask why, yeah? To investigate why. And don't start any techniques until you've got an answer to that question, until you're actually ready, until you actually want to meditate. So then when you apply yourself to the exercise of developing samadhi, you actually have a chance of being successful. And the very interesting thing is when you're really clear that you've established these preliminary steps, that you've got step 0 in place, even if you can hardly stay with the breath at all, you will still feel successful. It feels like an accomplishment to suppress the 5 hindrances. You will be happy whether you sit for 10 minutes or for an hour, because your sense of time will have gone quiet. You'll feel accomplished. And this is the importance of samadhi. And when that is the part of the goal of our meditative practice and development, then we will feel successful along the way. We won't be resisting this experience. Well, we will. Every time we sit down, we will resist, but we'll get over it. We'll get over it and we'll get to the task. And when you do these steps sequentially and you let them culminate, you let them really get firm and established before you move on to the next one, every step of the way, you're going to feel successful. And it's a beautiful thing, a wonderful thing in the practice. Nothing is more, because you could jump ahead and get a wonderful experience and bliss and all of that, but if you can't repeat it, you're likely to have a hard time staying with the practice. But if you start with this simple preliminary step and you stay with it until it's strong, then you'll already have the results you need to keep going. Every time you sit, you'll be just getting back to where you've been and then continuing on. Okay. So I offer these thoughts for your reflection tonight, and I hope that this is useful in helping you start to get started. Like the development of samadhi is established, it's described, but it has to be done by each person for themselves. It can't be done for you. Unlike the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha figured that one out. You just got to read them. But if you want samadhi, you'll have to do it yourself. You'll have to experience it. I can describe being in the present moment. I could write a whole book on it, and I could sell millions of copies, but it wouldn't give you that experience. Yeah. So until tomorrow, these are some thoughts and something to work with, and we'll develop that, and then the next step in the talk tomorrow morning.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Adriana, your voice got so high it shot right through the top of the Zoom room. And you even hear the last note.
About that.
If you want, Alex, you can go to the top right and click on the gallery view. Yeah. And now right click on me and say remove pin. Right click on my window, yeah. Yes. So this is fantastic. I would like to introduce Alex off camera.
Hello.
Finally have an MC to do all the technical stuff. I mean, this is a dream come true. And also introducing Luciana off screen, our meal coordinator for the retreat, who has offered this lovely Buddha and shrine setup, and has provided enough food for, she says, 4 people for 2 days, but it's probably 8 people for 6 days. and we're covered. So we're going to have a variety of friends coming to practice with us in person over the next 2 days. And that's just wonderful. And even the space has been offered by Sandy and Donna and Isa, some of our friends who live nearby, and gratitude to them. But then everybody online, just a real joy to see you all. And to give a heads up, if you're here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, there'll be a question and answer session, or 6 p.m., sorry, Eastern Standard Time. And if anybody is actually running this retreat in the comfort of their own home, then on Sunday, it's possible to get an interview, to just a short interview, to ask some questions and see where your development of samadhi is, and see if there's any way that can help it along, give any pointers. So if you are interested in that, send an email to info@upavana, and there's already been some requests to get on that list. So people in person will have that opportunity, and people online will have that opportunity. Otherwise, for those just tuning in because it's our normal Uposatha session, or because it's our normal Friday session, there's a lot of things happening today. It's great to see you. And that's all I have. Okay. All right. So until tomorrow.
Bante, did you say you'll continue streaming over Zoom for the next couple days? Is that right?
That is correct. I think there's the possibility of scheduling to just do it strictly on YouTube like I planned, but I don't want to say categorically I'm going to get it right. And then just people not be able to tap into it. So I think we're broadcasting even to YouTube right now, but probably we'll do it through Zoom, since we can do both and be certain that people can tap in. But there won't be any dialogue because it'll be a retreat format. So we'll just be practicing together.
Thank you, Bante.
Mm-hmm. All right, so everybody, we're not going to have the midnight sit so that people can work on being comfortable. So rest well, and get up when you wake up. Don't just, I mean, you know, that's that 8th precept. Don't just lie in bed forever, but get up and enjoy the morning. And I'll see you probably at 9 o'clock for the next phase. Here we'll have an optional morning puja, and we'll stream that too if you want to come. There'll be a little bit of chanting, a little bit of sitting, and that's a wonderful way of kind of like working into the flow of the morning, to get up and just meditate first thing. So may you all be well.
Thank you, Bante, and thank you to everyone in person. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so you can click end, bottom right. Actually, if you hold on a sec. Yeah, just end it. I was going to say.